All right, guys, we're back. Thank you for joining us again on this first episode of Stand the Gap podcast in partnership with the Mississippi Conservative Coalition. Um, we're going to get into just a little bit about what's happened, obviously, um, why you're seeing a lot more of probably these type of videos and this type of content come up. So, Charlie Kirk, right? Um, quite simply, I would almost say the faith that kind of shaped a movement. Charlie was super popular for saying, Jesus saved my life, I'm a sinner, Jesus saved my life, and giving my life to Christ was one of the most important decisions I ever made. And if we don't say that either first, I think it probably even first now, we're kind of defeating the purpose. Because if anything I say, over the course of all of this doesn't revolve around that, I'm lying and I just don't need to do any of this anymore. It is the best decision I've ever made. I believe the Bible is true and real, just like just like Charlie did. And, there's not a truth in there, just like he said, that you can't apply to your life and your life just becomes better. And it's not just like, okay, well, I believe that so my life's going to become better. No, it's actually doing it. It's waking up, living it, being thankful every day through all the stuff, even when it works out your way and when it doesn't. Uh, Charlie wasn't just a, conservative agitator, as some would say, or, he was a voice for a generation that was adrift. Like I said, a generation of young people that is lost, I think. And he had a steel spine for devotion to Christ and the gospel. And he showed us that. I think we were learning more now about that in his life, especially with his family, how what you're doing there is going to shape everything else. Even if it's just you and your spouse, no kids. If you have kids, even way more important. But while we're on that, your spouse, let's just start there. If you're a person that's married or newly married or with someone, my wife has shown me that grace isn't weakness. And that's a hard statement for me to say, because I think as men, we are conformed to want to be tough. We're conformed to want to be, the world has taught us to be strong and not cry and not show emotion. And we forget that we are who we are because there are some guys back in the day that said, you know what, enough's enough. We are destined to be much more, and we must seek Christ first. And if we don't seek Christ first, our natural and cultural like resurgence just will not follow if we're not following those things. If we're not chasing that stuff, it's never going to happen. Charlie also once said, he realized freedom without foundation is just chaos. So think about that for a minute. Freedom without foundation is just chaos, right? If there's nothing that it's built on, if there's no laws, if there's no organization in it, then you're really just running around in a big old party of freedom. But the message has to be, because that's very, broad. Politics is kind of downstream from all that, downstream from the culture, and the culture kind of comes from the faith, right? So if there's no faith, your culture's a mess. If the culture's a mess, guess what? Your politics are going to be a mess, and then here we are, right? So if you're not backing everything up, you're really not gonna understand, where it comes from. I mean, everything from uh, what I just mentioned a minute ago, ICE and immigration and borders are biblical. Defending your nation is biblical. Protecting your family is biblical, and we need to understand these things because generations like Generation Z, for instance, uh, you know, right now a lot of these kids are religiously unaffiliated. Thank God for the revival that's happening in our country that we're seeing those things change. But as of not long ago, 78%, U.S. adults share Christianity values. In 2007, 2024, 62%. 2025, still hovering at 62%. So what does that tell us? It dropped, and we are kind of at a plateau right now. And people are like, what do we do? Where do we go? People say that, our demographics have changed so much, the things going on in government, social media, all these things are just kind of pulling people in, and it's pulling people away from the faith and the truth. So if we're not trying to do something, which is what, we have to equip Christians to stand for liberty. We have to equip Christians to stand for the kingdom. We have to equip them to stand for biblical truth. All these things, we can't keep tiptoeing around the wall of separation of church and state. The Constitution does not mandate that. There will be a wall separating church and state. That's not true. Only that the state can make no laws to establish and endorse a particular religion. So that's where the twist always is. Like, you're not supposed to mix the two. Like, no, you should very much mix the two. It's just saying that the state can't say this is the religion that you have to practice and you have no choice, and that's it. That's what we were trying to get away from, aka King, aka, back in the day. America was founded on Christian principles. You may have heard this, they had to sign an oath of religion, an oath of faith that said that they were believers whenever they first started to create our country. For America to be great, we had to remain a majority Christian. And right now we're just on the cusp of that. We're not really as we should be anymore. And I think, thankfully, the conversation has changed from, drain the swamp to, draw from the well. We need a youth army with Bibles in one hand and ballots in the other. We really, 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 really have to get our young people engaged, organized, and just listening. Listening to all of us, not just me. It's all of us. We should all be doing this. We should all be getting online. Excuse me. We should all be speaking the truth to the people we care about. I care about you guys. That's why I'm doing this. Because otherwise you might look and say, well, that's what he does and that's what he's about. And the truth is, none of that matters without Jesus Christ. And that's what y'all need to know. That's what y'all need to know, that Matthew 5:14 says, you are the light of the world. Don't hide it under big text bushels, if you will, is what Charlie kind of added to that. And I think he meant that, there's something special for all of us. We were all designed in an image that is unique with a purpose. And it was not for the design to be hidden behind a phone, hidden behind a keyboard. They say, Chris, you're behind the phone right now. Well, I am, but I'm using my voice and I'm putting my face out there. I'm risking some things. to let you know that, God's real. Faith isn't escapism. And what faith is and what Jesus is, it's the forge that tempers freedom fighters. That's what got our founders riled up so much to the extent where they're like, look, this was a revival back then. This is a revival now. And just like, Charlie was saying, give me your campuses and I'll give you your future. We have to do the same. We're saying, look, give us your youth, give us your young people. We will give you a future. I can't imagine if I'm not talking to my kids and showing my kids these things and, running for office and stuff like that. I'm like, who would show them this? Who would tell them about this? Who would talk to them about how the process works? And, and then we homeschool. So it's really up to us. Whole other conversation we'll have later as well. But here's what this leads to. Luke 10 says the harvest is plentiful, but laborers are few. There's a lot of work to be done, and the amount of workers there are is growing. It's not few. I think it's growing. And I think that we're at a point of advance, and that young people are flocking to faith, and the revival and what's going on in this country has proven that. And what Charlie was doing was feeding young people's hunger for meaning, and everything else, not everything, but a lot of things are just feeding our hunger for acceptance. They're feeding our hunger for, this world and no stability. And unfortunately, it's become, a question for us is, will we continue this trend? Are our kids going to continue that trend? Are our communities going to continue that trend? I can't imagine, where we're going to be in 10, 15, 20 years if this trend of just, we soak up the news and the media so much and we're not really sure who to trust, but, it's been right there in front of us this whole time. Hebrews 12 says, run with endurance, looking to Jesus. Y'all run hard as fast as you can. I don't have a choice anymore, quite honestly. We were in the process of making some pretty big moves, and then decided that this is where God was calling us now. And it echoes every single day. Thank God for the people that do this stuff on the daily, like our pastors and group leaders and people that are constantly putting themselves out there for the greater good, because that's where the real war is. But instead, it seems like it's in the streets. And I want to mention this because I think some people may even see this and say, you're talking about this, and I've heard this back and forth. You're talking about Charlie, but you're not talking about shootings. Or you're talking about shootings. You're not talking about Charlie. We're talking about this. We're not talking about that. Okay, plot twist. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about everything. We're everything that we can, right? That's somewhat relevant. I think that's where a lot of our people fail, is we don't talk about one thing because of how it may look, or what the people that already, believe in us may think. So they don't say anything. Okay, well, I'm going to say it. We talked about Charlie and the movement, and we'll talk about that more because I think credit is due where it's due. And now let's talk about the 8 dead and more than 20 people killed. I'm sorry, injured, more than 20 people injured. 8 people dead over the past 2 days here in Mississippi. Leland, Mississippi, Rolling Fork, Mississippi, Jackson State University, Heidelberg, Alcorn State. Most of these are names you know. It would break Charlie's heart. It breaks my heart that every single one of these, as we'll cover a few, are almost all youth involved, it seems like. In one way, a child, was even hit by a bullet. Thankfully, he's in the hospital and recovering, but 2 at Alcorn State, 1 at Jackson State, 1 person dead at Alcorn, 2 others injured. Like I said, a kid was hit, and 6 people dead in Leland, Mississippi after a football game Friday night. After a football game. Friday night. And we think we don't have a problem. Parents sent their kids off to a game, or maybe even were there with them. And for whatever reason, there's other people angry enough, sad enough, that felt they had to turn to this to get a point across. Y'all, these things took place on football fields, on towns, a main street. I don't have many words for this other than we have to save our young people. We have to save our young people. Mississippi Bureau of Investigation is assisting local and federal law enforcement agencies. I know they had to clear out Jackson State yesterday. Basically, they said, "Look, homecoming's over. Like, we just, we can't do this," and I commend them for that. They're obviously trying to find the people responsible for this. Motives behind the shootings are unknown. It's and it's probably gonna end up being senseless. Y'all, I can't. I'm not Charlie Kirk. I can't go and save everybody. I know we all can, and I know that's probably like the thing that the enemy says to us inside, and then we tell ourselves to think we can't do anything. But I just can't help but think, like, man, if I could just sit down with that kid, I don't even know that I could say anything to him, but I know I want to, and we should all want to, because that's what a lot of these kids don't have. There's nobody there to listen, to talk to mentor them. They don't understand where they came from. They don't understand the laws. They don't understand why things are. They don't understand, the world that they're going into. They don't have help. And it is our job. It is our job to raise these kids up. And when there's a kid that doesn't have, parents there all the time, it's our job to look after those kids. I just can't imagine, and hopefully it's a wake-up call to some of the people in those communities to look around at the kids around them. Y'all, you can only have so much reach, but there are things you can do. There are things you can do, and if you can, what did Pastor say? Today, if you get in there and volunteer in Kids World with the kids, double points for you, because we know that's where it matters, right? I was on a baseball field today, coaching my son's little league team, and I couldn't just think that there is a place just like this, and there's something going on where kids are just upset enough. And when we got done today, we won, everything was great, kids are happy, but after every practice I pull them all to second base, and we sit and we huddle for a minute, and I just ask them, like, do you guys need anything? I try to look at each one of them in their eyes, like, because if I can't do anything for the bigger picture, these are 13 little kids that I can at least, like, do you need anything? Like, how is everything at home? Without trying to intrude too much, I've let their parents know pretty early on kind of where I'm coming from and what I'm about and how I want to minister to them, if they'll allow me, to, just be another voice that backs them up. Like, hey, take care of your parents, treat your parents right, take care of your siblings, take care of your classmates. If we're not all, saying this constantly, repeatedly to our kids are mean. Kids can be little jerks. They don't know any better. Pride and selfishness is so natural and inherent in us that these kids are looking for acknowledgement. They're looking for popularity. They're looking to make a statement. They're looking for anything they can to get some attention. Unfortunately, what that's leading to is these senseless acts of violence that we're seeing, and it's not these kids. It's not the people. It is the enemy that has infiltrated, and it is our responsibility and our job to fight back, to take our kids back. Same with our country. Same with our our state, our communities, and we'll talk more about that. We'll get into some politics here in a minute as soon as we get back.